The United States is at war with Iran, the Middle East is on fire, NATO is falling apart, Cuba is on the brink of collapse, and Venezuela is still being run by Maduro allies. So where will Marco Rubio be on Tuesday morning? Well, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor will be in a federal courtroom in downtown Miami testifying against his longtime friend, former Congressman David Rivera. A little background. In 2017, Rivera was given a secret $50 million contract by the U.S. subsidiary of the Venezuelan oil company PDVSA. Supposedly, the contract was a way to help the company expand business in the United States. But federal prosecutors claim it was really a payoff by Venezuela's government to try and negotiate an end to the U.S. sanctions against the country. And why would Venezuela hire a middling, one-term former congressman with a history of scandal? Well, one possible answer is that Rivera helped them gain access to Marco Rubio. Rubio and Rivera have been close friends for decades. They owned a house together in Tallahassee and were roommates when they served in the Florida legislature. And in terms of access and gaining it, well, it worked. Rivera arranged 2 meetings with Rubio and others in 2017 to discuss the future of Venezuela. Ultimately, nothing came of the meetings, but in December 2022, prosecutors charged Rivera with failing to register as a foreign agent and money laundering. Rivera denies he did anything wrong, and Rubio has never been accused of wrongdoing. Now, back in August of 2022, 4 months before the federal indictment against Rivera was made public, I interviewed Marco Rubio about Rivera's work for Venezuela. I want to just ask you a question because there's been a lawsuit going on for the last few years involving former roommate of yours, a longtime friend of yours, David Rivera, and his representation of the Venezuelan oil company. I'm just sort of curious, have you ever had a conversation with David Rivera regarding his representation of Venezuela?
No, but I can tell you this, that it had nothing to do with me. None of those articles. The only reason, every single one of those articles gratuitously mentions that the guy and I were roommates in Tallahassee over a decade and a half ago. It's just silly. He's someone I've known for a very long time. We've worked closely, but not on this. And there's not a single person claiming otherwise.
Do you keep in touch? Do you talk with David? Have you ever actually asked him, what are you doing representing? You're an outspoken critic of Maduro and Venezuela. Have you ever called him out on this?
I've seen the articles. I've never discussed it with him. I haven't spoken to him in a while. That's not out of design. He's not in Congress anymore. He's moved on and doing the things he's doing. But in the end, it's nothing to do with me. The only reason people ask this is because they're hoping. Everybody, you know, people that ask that question, Jim, including yourself, unfortunately, everyone's hoping there's some sort of linkage to me. Not a single one of these articles claims that there is. And if they did, they'd be lying. The truth of the matter is that it has nothing to do with me, but people like to ask it because they think it'd be interesting if there was something there. Nothing to do with me. I don't know. You have to ask him.
4 months later, when the Rivera indictment was revealed, we learned for the first time about the 2 meetings Rivera had arranged with Rubio. Now, was Rubio truthful back in August of 2022 when he told me that he never had any conversations with Rivera about his representation of Venezuela? Technically, yes. Rubio claims that when he met with Rivera in 2017, he had no idea Rivera was being paid by anyone, so he didn't know Rivera was representing Venezuela. But when I spoke to him, he never disclosed the meetings he had with Rivera about Venezuela. And it was a bit disingenuous to say this case has nothing to do with him. It certainly has to do with him, and that's why he'll be on the witness stand Tuesday morning. Now, in advance of the trial, I spoke to the Miami Herald's longtime federal courts reporter, Jay Weaver. So, Jay, what are we expecting to hear from Marco Rubio when he takes the stand on Tuesday?
Well, I think he's going to have to come clean, and he's going to have to be very straightforward, and he's going to have to stick to what he told the FBI. And what he told the FBI and what he told prosecutors is that he did meet with David Rivera, his old friend, you know, whom they've known each other since their days in the state legislature a couple of decades ago. And he's going to tell him that they met twice in Washington, D.C., and they met in 2017, and they did talk about, you know, Venezuela. But what he's going to probably say is, look, we talked about Venezuela, but we talked about an exit strategy. We both wanted Maduro out. We both wanted a change in the regime, and we both wanted him to hold fair, you know, free and fair elections.
The key is going to be, though, that he's going to say he didn't even know Rivera had this contract at the time that they met. and that in a way that actually bolsters the government's case that Rivera was acting as a foreign agent without disclosing it to government officials.
Well, that's a very interesting question because on the one hand, the ostensible reason why Rivera didn't, register as a foreign agent and his consultant friend Esther Newford didn't register as a foreign agent when they got this $50 million contract from, Venezuela's national oil company subsidiary in the United States is they didn't want anybody to know about it, right? They didn't even want Rubio to know about it. And so Rubio kind of he can play it both ways. He can say, I didn't know anything about it. And while we were discussing, normalizing relations with Venezuela, which means getting rid of Maduro as president, I had no idea that he was getting paid a $50 million salary. It plays well for Rubio. It does not play well for Rivera.
I guess just taking a step back here for a second, I got to admit, I'm amazed this case is still going to trial. I would have thought that given David's connections, Rivera's connections within the Republican Party, being a former Republican congressman, that this case never would have went forward once Donald Trump was elected president, if for no other reason than to spare the embarrassment of having his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, have to testify in this case and rehash all these connections to David Rivera. What's your thinking? Are you a little surprised that this case is going to
Yeah, I'm a little surprised because the chattering classes, who talk about this stuff here and in DC, they're basically saying they thought because of the Pam Bondi memo where she says, we're not doing any more of these foreign agent cases where people don't register unless it involves espionage. And so right there, you're thinking, okay, here's a memo. It's pushed by the Trump administration, by Trump himself in his second term. And then on top of all that, you're thinking, okay, so they're going to make it go away for that reason and pressure the prosecutors here to dismiss the case, right? And because they've been doing this around the country, including the Eric Adams case, as you know, in New York. And, in addition to that, there was a feeling that maybe the case would go away because Rivera's Marco's longtime friend. And, you'd think, okay, maybe he can make it go away and it would clean the slate. But for some reason, it never happened. And everybody was going, wow, this thing is going to trial. And a lot of people were surprised, just like you, just like me. And now here we are going to trial. And in some ways, maybe this helps Marco Rubio because he has aspirations to become president. He's a very high profile Secretary of State. He's by far the most important person in the administration after Trump. Forget about Vance, forget about Susie Wiles, the chief of staff. Marco Rubio is really the second most important person in the Trump administration. He is likely to run for president. This won't be a good look, but it'll be less of a bad look than it would have been if he had asked Trump to basically pressure the Justice Department to dismiss the charges.